so many characters that are in Yakuza 0 are dead by the end of Yakuza 1. And so we're just like, what the fuck? Who is even in this game anymore? Who do we care about? Like,
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. Because at least the prequel, you could go back and pluck anybody from any of the games.
Exactly. So, like, if we had played 1 and been like, okay, this character we know dies at the end of 1, whereas, like, now we're, like, gearing ourselves up, like, oh, we want to see where all of these characters go and what all of their arcs are. It's like, oh, all of their arcs end. Like,
I was going to say, I wonder, like, you don't play as that same character in every game, right? Like, there's different protagonists.
I think near the end of the series, there's more. I think you're pretty much always playing as Kiryu, except for 0, you're playing as Kiryu and Goro. And Lauren and I love Goro Majima more than anything in the world. He's the best character and anything ever. And the apparently, from what I understand, 0 is the way to kind of explain how his arc goes from 1 to 6 in the series. Mm-hmm. But like because apparently like his character changes incredibly over the course of the series. But the change from 0 to 1 is the most drastic thing in the world. Lauren's like, do I not like this character anymore? like
right off the bat?
Yes. Like, because
interesting.
He like, and I don't, we should start the podcast.
Yeah. I was going to say, I feel bad. We're already an hour in. Hey everybody, welcome to Pursuing Pixels. My name's Kevin Portelli, and I'm here tonight with John Hines.
Hey there.
And it is just the two of us again. I feel like it's been a little while since it's just been the two of us, although we've been bouncing all over the place, having some guests on the show. Randall's been back for a few episodes lately. But yeah, let's just dig right into the video games off the bat. And John, I know you're ticking off that resolution game that we, every year for our holiday episode, right towards kind of like an end of the year wrap up.
Cutting
instead
it
of doing
close.
Like a game of yeah. Hey, I'm cutting it even closer. I still haven't started Hyperlight Drifters, so I need to get on that. But yeah, I know you were playing some Picross action. So what were you playing this year?
I was playing Mediatonic's Murder by Numbers, which is a combination visual novel, murder mystery, and Picross game.
And we should give just like a little context. And actually, when we had Matt Glanville on the podcast recently, he was saying that he's picked up some of those Picross-esque games that you've talked about.
Oh,
so John's like coming from like a pretty big, I don't want to say like diehard Picross fan, but it just seems like a thing where you're just like, hey, there's a Picross that I haven't played, and
I know
it's on
right
sale,
off
like
the
I'll
bat,
pick it up.
Like when I see a set of numbers, I'm like, all right, I know exactly which boxes to fill
the accountant,
in.
The accountant in you starts coming out. But at the same time, like you have mentioned before, like I want a Picross with like a little something more to it,
Yeah.
I know you've mentioned that a few times on the podcast, and I think that was part of the reason you made this your resolution. Like, hey, this could fit that bill.
Yeah.
So.
Because I've played a few Picross games that, try to add in something like a mechanic, like an RPG mechanic or something else where, it kind of feels like it doesn't really fit in with the game, or like kind of just adds in an extra thing that doesn't really, I don't know, doesn't add any value to it. This one was something that, I've not actually played any of the Phoenix Wright games. I know that we've mentioned them before on the podcast.
Yeah, but Randall, I think Randall and Tina are both big fans of that series. And it's funny you mentioned that because I get I've never played those either, but I get very much an Ace Attorney vibe just from the little clips you've shared.
Oh, yeah. And like that's part of the reason why I really wanted to play it, because I felt like even though like they're not necessarily like related genres at all, I felt like it was at least something that, there's some legwork in the investigation and you're solving puzzles, and then you're using those. Every Picross puzzle that you solve, you get a piece of evidence, and then you can use that piece of evidence in your investigation. And then you're using that to ask different suspects and like in their question phase and be like, oh, like what is like, do you recognize this piece of evidence? And like it actually does play and tie into the mechanics of the game in a way that I think is actually pretty fun. Like But at the most part, the core of the game is this detective game. Like there's the difference between the Picross levels and the detective levels are pretty night and day. Like the game basically grinds to a halt when you start a Picross game, but also that's my favorite part. So I was going to say
that sounds like the gameplay where like for me, it like a game feels like it grinds to a halt when it's in the story section. I'm like, hey, give me back to the gameplay where like, is this bringing story? So is it doing like the detective gameplay? Like I'm picturing Ace Attorney, but I'm also kind of picturing like Professor Layton. Are you doing like kind of some point and click stuff going on, or is it strictly more a visual novel presentation?
It's mostly a visual novel thing. Like when you so you have Scout, which is your 1990s like IBM computer hover robot that is the one that is analyzing all of the pieces of evidence, and that's how you're kind of doing these nonogram puzzles. Is because your Scout is analyzing the data and inputting it. So the whole thing is very 90s themed. You play a detective on a TV show, so it kind of also has these tropes of, say, like a Psych or any I don't know, actually is the
like a soap opera almost, or like
more a procedural, very very much
like CSI.
Yes, and which is, I'm actually a huge fan of like crime procedurals, at least very specifically detective procedurals. I'm not a big fan of like the CSI or NCIS, but like
are there any in particular? Okay, I was just gonna say, are there any in particular that you're a fan of?
Yeah, Columbo and Psych are two of my favorites. Like Psych is a very goofy and silly one, but it like has all the great tropes of like an amateur, or like I didn't really get into like Bones or Castle that was the one I was thinking of, but like it's a well-worn
from our Best Buy days when Randall and I were working the Fox section, full of them.
But it's well-trod ground of like, oh, this amateur or like this actor or writer or Murder, She Wrote, like this person who's not necessarily a detective is working on these cases and using their know-how to like solve these. So it does like it's honestly doing as much of like scratching an itch for Picross as scratching an itch for this specific type of TV series that I haven't had in a while.
Interesting.
Because like there are a lot of, crime shows that are just too much for me. Like I don't watch True Detective. I don't watch, or what was the one with David Tennant as Broadchurch. Like they're very serious like crime or detective procedurals that are just very brutal in like their presentation.
Yeah, we were talking about some of those. Like I've sometimes a lot of times like put on like true crime podcasts in the background, and they're like very like when you realize what you're listening to, sometimes like number one, you're just like, this is fucking gross. Like what the fuck? Why are you telling me this? And then like sometimes you're just like, this is also like so cringy, like how like I don't know, like the presentation of just like I don't know how to explain it, but I know what you mean, I think.
Yeah, but like there are certain there's a certain genre of like detective procedurals that I really enjoy, and those are the ones that are more lighthearted, even though they are almost always dealing with murder and like it's very serious crime, but like, in a way that has a lot of humor or a lot of charm to it, and that, is in itself like has, some problematic themes and like cheapening it, and like also glorifying
stereotypes,
police work that doesn't necessarily reflect that in any way in reality. But
right.
But at the same time, it is it's a genre that I really enjoy, and I think this story does a really good job of like I'm glad I've played through 2 of the 4 cases that are in it.
Okay.
And the first case kind of is an introductory one, but it's still got a fair amount of length to it. But the second one is far and away, like I think twice as long as the first case, and like has a lot more dialogue options, a lot more investigative options, and a lot more like talking just to people in general. And
real quick, the investigative options, like those are like conversational options mostly, or
So it's broken up into two things where you investigate you go to a scene or a location, and then Scout will scan the scene, and you are using your cursor to like hover over different areas, and then once the radar beeps or goes off, then like that's when Picross puzzle starts, and then you solve that puzzle.
It's sort of got a little Professor Layton DNA, and like they're kind of surveying the scene, and okay.
And then when you solve a puzzle, then you have a piece of evidence, and then you can take that evidence. You're always asking questions to people, but then you can show them pieces of evidence as well. And that will sometimes unlock new questions that you can ask or new dialogue trees. And then that will open up the next. I actually like got a little bit stuck on like the second one, and I had asked all like the person that I like everything with all of the evidence.
The suspect.
Right. And then I went to another person, and like talking to the second person unlocked something in the first person. So I had to go back and re-ask the first person all of the things I'd already asked them. So there is a little bit of like flags that you need to like cross in order to set up to advance in the story, but nothing that's, too complicated or too difficult to do. Like it didn't take I don't think that was a flaw necessarily, but it's a lot more interactive than I was expecting, but at the same time, like it does feel very scripted in that like the way that the first case ended, I was like, is there a way to get a different ending of this, or is it always going to be the same events that play out? And I think what happens is that there is a set of events that will always play out, and just your score at the end will change, and your score unlocks additional puzzles that you can play outside of the game. And I don't know if you unlock all the puzzles and clear all the puzzles, you get an additional story or something. So there's an incentive to go back and like get a perfect score on everything, so then you can unlock all the puzzles in the game and then complete all that. So there's definitely an incentive to go back and do things better, but I don't necessarily think like it's possible to fail, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I think
that's sort of a good thing though, depending on the game, but like sometimes you do want to just like kind of casually breeze through an experience and like, get a little taste and like flavor of the mechanics, but like I don't necessarily want to be getting a game over every 5 minutes and restarting the level over and over again and be on a strict timer to finish these puzzles or whatever, That
said, that I tried to look up something because there was a feature that I really liked in the game where I'm actually playing on the easiest setting for the Picross puzzles, just because I didn't know how much that would impede the gameplay of the actual investigations. So I was like, I'll just play it on the easiest setting and see how this works. But there is a section where you will hack using Scout, and when you hack, I'm not sure, I couldn't find if like it is just a randomly generated Picross puzzle with no hints and you aren't allowed to use X's. You're only allowed to fill in the blanks. So you can't guide it, but it's a timer. You can't say like, oh, this is a blank, like I don't want to fill this in. Right, but it's a timer then, like, and every mistake you make ticks down the timer. And honestly, that was the most accurate depicting of like, or feeling of hacking I've ever felt in a video game, because I feel like I'm stressed out. I'm like, okay, I can't make any mistakes. I have to get all of this right. I have to like make sure I'm only filling in the correct boxes, and I'm doing like 4 of these puzzles in a row with no mistakes. And like that felt really good. But the only thing I could find was someone being like, I can't get past the third case's like hacking section, and it's impossible to skip, and you like need to finish it in order to complete the case. And I'm like, ooh, I could definitely see how that would be like a roadblock for someone, and like that. Yeah, especially in this type of game. Yeah. Well, like especially in a game that like for all other purposes feels like it's difficult to lose. So like have something that is like legitimately like impeding your progress and like seems difficult, but I did really love it. So like part of me is like, oh, but I love this part. I don't want that part to be gone. Right.
Right. Yeah. I always like a good, even when they're simple, like even when it's just like a pipe dream or whatever that game is, like I'm kind of a sucker for a good hacking mini game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm really enjoying it, and I'm pumped to, play the rest of the game, because it's at the very least got its hooks in me, and like, because I was a little lukewarm on the story at the beginning of the second case, but like by the time I got to the end of it, I'm like, nah, I want to see more. This has all of the perfect tropes of a detective procedural. Like, this is hitting all the buttons that I want. So I'm enjoying it. I'm gonna keep playing it.
Is it hitting, like, because for me, like, it kind of reminds me, like, we talked about this a long time ago on the podcast, you and I, John, but the world next door, like, it kind of reminds me of because, like, I really liked the gameplay in that game, even though it, like, the stakes never got high enough. Like, the balance was off, but, like, the gameplay and the presentation were really nice. Like, they had a lot going on, but it didn't quite connect the dots, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But, like, I'm getting that vibe of, like, the kind of visual novel presentation. That was even more scripted in the sense of, like, you're going through these just kind of story beats and then playing a section of, like, a dungeon with some puzzle action in between, but like even that felt kind of easy and like inconsequential almost.
And it might be a genre thing, in that like this type of story just appeals to me more for Murder by Numbers, but if it also like gives away anything, like the fact that I have not thought of the world next door until you mentioned it at this point.
It took me so long to remember the name. I was like, the world ends with you. The world. Which one is it?
Because it was good. It wasn't a bad game. I didn't dislike it, but I didn't have the drive to keep going through it. But like,
it didn't get the hooks in me. But it was like a cool concept. It was like I wanted it to be a better game. Like, nothing against it, but I was just like, man, I wish this grabbed me more, because it's almost something really unique and really cool. It is really unique and really cool, but it's like almost something really special on top of that. Yeah,
it definitely is for someone, but not for me, and it's a bummer that it's not like directly like hitting everything that I want.
Yeah, because on paper, for both you and I think it like checks off a lot of boxes where it's like, ooh, this is nice.
Yep.
But yeah, I wanted to give a shout out to a few games that I've been playing. I haven't been digging like a ton of time into a lot of games lately. I've been kind of just poking around and playing the first few levels of some games. And I've been playing a bunch of like really expressive platformers, and like specifically kind of they like there's an element of precision going on, but like kind of like we've been talking about with Murder by Numbers, kind of low stakes. Like, I don't know how to explain it, because like there is an element of precision to all these games, or like racking up combos or whatever it might be. Like, there's an element of like that like gaming element, I guess, but at the same time, it's like it just feels like I'm kind of casually playing these games, which has been really nice. And the first one I want to mention is The Gardener and the Wild Vines, and I kind of like a little bit wrote this game off as like kind of a gimmicky thing, because you just see some like gameplay clips, and it's a 2D side-scrolling platformer, but at the same time you're kind of like climbing up, like think like the like Klonoa games, like 2.5D, where there is like some 3D elements going on. You're actually like kind of scaling up these towers and like climbing up them, and there'll be these vines growing up the towers, and you play as this gardener with these giant like shears that you like chop into the flowers, and every time you chop like one of the flowers on the vines, it like will open that up and make like a little leaf platform for you to stand on, and you kind of like slice and like dash through the flower. And then once the little leaf platform is there, you can either obviously just stand on it and jump on it regular, or you can kind of almost do like a ground pound and like spring off of it and get some like massive extra height. And like the reason it's so expressive is like it does seem to be like the levels are handcrafted, but like the way that the flowers and whatnot spawn after you like chop the flowers on the vines, like they seem to kind of randomly grow off of that. And you're kind of like, it's meant for you to kind of rack up combos. Like if you can keep slicing flowers in a quick succession, it isn't even a situation where like you can't land. Like you can land, but you there's like just a quick cooldown timer. But if you can keep slicing, and again, the points are kind of arbitrary for the best that I could tell. You get a ranking on a level or whatever. But at the end of the day, you're kind of like just climbing a tower, and there'll be like a knight up at the top of the tower, and they'll be like, hey, the prince is in another tower. You need to go to another tower. So there's like the humor in the writing is like really well done. It's like never is intrusive. There's just like a little dialogue sequence before and after each stage between your gardener and like the knight that is like kind of like, are you seriously still trying to climb these towers, man? And you're like, yeah, I'm trying to find the prince. And again, flipping the script, you're trying to rescue the prince, which is cool. But it's just got a bunch of cool mechanics where, like, again, with those shears, like, to kind of slow your fall, kind of like Super Mario World with the cape, like where you hold down a button to kind of like flutter down a little slower. You actually like dig your shears into the side of the tower and like kind of grind down a little slower. And like,
nice.
I saw some clips of some later stages, like there's like bullet hell, almost like projectiles, like chasing you around the tower. And like, I don't know, there's like a hidden little bird, like lovebird on each stage that adds some puzzle elements where it's like, sometimes it's you have to reach like where the hidden bird cage is in a certain, like in a limited amount of time. Gotcha. Sometimes it's in a certain number of, I can't remember what the other unlocks were, but you had to like reach it within like, maybe it's like not chopping a certain number of flowers or something. But just like, I don't know, for a game that like I think I said right off the top, like it looked like it could kind of be like just a cool visual presentation, but maybe kind of a gimmicky thing. I was like, oh, this is really fun and can't wait to play more of this.
Nice.
And then another 2D platformer that I also can't wait to play more of. And admittedly, I have not played much of this game at all, but it's one that I was really anticipating. We got sent a copy of this game from the developer. It's called Webbed, and it's a 2D side-scrolling platformer. I want to say it's got some open world elements. I got to a point where there was like a map screen, but kind of more like Randall was talking about Ori recently, like kind of more like where there's like that kind of like massive map screen that you can zoom way out and kind of see all the different sections and then like zoom in and like maybe each section is more like a level, like Gato Roboto style.
Right.
But it's a game where like it can be really difficult sometimes to play like a twin stick platformer, if you will, where you're kind of like aiming with one of the sticks to like, in this case, shoot your web to not only like, sometimes it's like your attack, it's actually, they're just like web lasers that you shoot. Like that right off the bat, there's like a crow that comes and steals like I think it's your boyfriend or girlfriend, I forget. It steals your partner and you have to go rescue your partner. But like right off the bat, like again, you play as this spider, and an awesome feature of this game is if you happen to be arachnophobic, you can actually, even though like all the characters are spiders, you can turn on arachnophobia mode and it just turns them all into like goopy blobs.
Yes.
And you can just play. And it's just such a cool, like, hey, this game that is like strictly based around spiders, we're gonna throw you a bone, It's always nice to see. Like, I'm always a big fan of when they add like confetti instead of blood or something like that. Like, just, I don't need to see blood splattering all over the place all the time. So it's always nice to see. But Webbed, I just really like, again, you're shooting kind of twin stick lasers, but they really do the thing I was most impressed by is like you are using the right stick to kind of aim either your lasers or your like web swinging, like it's, 2D side scrolling Spider-Man style, web slinging, like unbelievably expressive. But instead of like having one of the shoulder buttons be your jump button, it still uses like the typical face button for jumping. And then it kind of like reverts to like using the left stick as you're aiming when you're in midair. So like you don't always have to be playing it like a twin stick shooter where like games like Bleed, or I've mentioned a few other like side-scrolling platformer shooters in the past that like you do have to kind of use the shoulder buttons to jump. And that can be a little bit, at least for me, difficult to do. Like I kind of just need to press buttons with my thumb when I'm playing a video game.
There are certain things that, I've at least trained myself that I'm okay with, like, using a shoulder button for a grapple hook or for a trigger on a gun, but like,
or a dash
jump
or
is
something.
not one of them. It's just there's not been enough games that have used that setup that doesn't feel supernatural to me.
It feels wrong. It feels wrong. And this is coming from somebody that's like, when I play certain games from like Matt Ugg, who I haven't raved about in a while on the podcast, honestly, but like there's some games that are like kind of mouse controlled, but you also need to control like a 2D platforming character. Mm-hmm. And I will straight up like map the controls with Anti-Micro, like a controller remapping software, to be like, I'm controlling the character with the joystick or the D-pad, pressing the left trigger to jump, and then aiming with the mouse. So I have like the controller in my left hand and then the mouse in my right hand.
Okay.
That's how I'll play those games. Cause like it's like, there'll be a type of game where it's like, you can't duplicate it with dual stick controls. Like you really need to be able to whip the cursor around like from left to right and from one side of your character to the other. So like you need to be able to have that immediacy. But yeah, I can't recommend anti-micro.
Odyssey was mapped to the jump was A, correct?
It might have been, no, I think it was B.
Because I thought B was shoot, like with the...
I haven't played Odyssey in so long. I mean, I don't want to belabor the point. It's my least favorite Mario game, so it's the least memorable to me.
No, not Odyssey. Sorry, Galaxy. Good Lord.
Galaxy. I'm trying to think. It was on the Wii remote, I'm trying to think. I didn't play it. I didn't pick up the collection. It's not, no, I knew.
No, but like on the Wiimote, yeah, on like that's what I'm talking about, like because like that is kind of like I was trying to figure. I'm holding my hands up to like you can't see it on the podcast.
I know, yeah. But it was the A. It was still like
it was the A button because B was the trigger to shoot the
star bits. Shoot the star bits. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So like even that, even like because when you were describing the like mouse and half of a controller, I'm like that's kind of like a Wiimote and nunchuck almost like.
Yeah, it's not that far off.
Yeah.
Especially, you are using your right hand to kind of like aim. Yeah. That's actually pretty damn close. I honestly wish I had a nunchuck to hold in my left hand because it's sort of awkward holding like a regular controller and like one-handing it. Yeah. Oh, man. But yeah, I've been really impressed with Webb. Like honestly, I played around like almost like I've mentioned this before, even like when I first got a Nintendo 64 and spent like 20 minutes running around in the courtyard of the castle. Like I kind of had that experience of like, there's like this little kind of, it's like an opening cutscene. You play through a couple screens of just teaching you the ropes, and there's like a little crow that comes and steals your partner away. I think I mentioned that too. But like after that, I've really just played a little bit past that and just kind of like experimented around with like the web slinging. You can even like, so you're not just using it to swing around, but you're like, you can also like use a different shoulder button to like attach it to this wall and like build a bridge. So like you attach it to one point, aim at another point, let go, and then you build a bridge that you can walk over. But then you can, once you build that bridge, you can then connect your web to that bridge. And it's like, it's just so expressive how much you can like, and like the sense of momentum and like just swinging yourself around. Like it's just so, I have almost played nothing of this game and I've already had so much fun. So I'm really excited to dig into like what the game actually is. Because the controls themselves are just so much fun. And like, I just wanted to give one more shout out to a 3D platformer called Glyph. And this game really kind of combines like everything that, even though I haven't played like the Marble It Up games that Randall has hyped up on the podcast before, like the 3D kind of Marble Madness homages, if you will. But like, I'm a big fan of that style gameplay, or even they're almost like Super Monkey Ball style games. But Glyph is like you play as this kind of like beetle kind of ball character that is mostly in ball form, and then you can like double jump. Like I've played through the tutorial in a handful of stages. I kind of thought it was gonna be a little different structure of a game, but it really is just like a stage based, almost like racing game 3D platforming hybrid. Like a little bit of like, even like Tori 3D is kind of got some of that DNA. Like it's kind of like these straight line levels and you're jumping around and you got a double jump. You have a ground pound that when you utilize it properly, you can get more height on your jumps. And then you also have like a kind of like cape, like flutter, like you like flap your little beetle wings, hover, and like get just a little extra height, but definitely more distance if you're trying to cover like you're just like, at least in the first world, you're kind of like bouncing around and traveling around these ruins and you can't touch the sand. It's basically like the floor is lava is essentially the game. And you're just trying to not touch the ground, not touch anything that's not safe, and bounce around. And there's like little double jump power pads that you can grab, and like just really great. I don't know. Again, it looked like a game that was like maybe a little simple on the surface, but like looked really fun to play. And I was like, I am a sucker for a 3D platformer, and like, let's give this game a try. And like, I found myself like, let's play another level. Let's play another level. Let's play another level. And like, I just kept playing this game. Like, it's so much fun. And it just came out on PC. It oddly came out on consoles before PC, which is almost never the case. But like, I saw it on Switch a long time ago and actually played the demo and really liked it. And then again, we got offered a copy from the developers, and I was like, oh man, this looks cool, and I'll definitely check this out. And was very happy to like play beyond the demo, because it was the demo alone like kind of introduces some mechanics where you're like, whoa, this is pretty cool. And then after that, it like, oh, this is like a full-fledged like arcadey experience, but full-fledged experience. I'm really pumped to play more of this game. And again, 3D platformers, we don't get enough of them, and they're not always, even Mario Odyssey. I've mentioned enough times that I'm not the biggest fan of that one. So it's always nice to kind of get something. And again, that adds in that racing element is really cool as well.
Yeah.
But speaking of 3D kind of expressive controls, I know this isn't exactly a platformer, but close enough. It basically feels like one. There's some platforming elements
around. You need to get on verticality, but
you got to land on the rails.
Mm-hmm. I have with all of the base characters 100%ed every campaign, every skate tour in Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2.
Which is pretty insane. Like, I'm imagining that's quite a bit of gameplay. I know you've been putting in quite a bit of time on the Switch that I've seen. And we should probably mention that I know Randall's talked about this a few times on the podcast, and we always go on our Tony Hawk tangents whenever he brings it up. But like, I think this is the first time we've talked about the Switch version of this new Tony Hawk 1 and 2. Which
I will say, as someone who played Tony Hawk 1 on the N64 and Tony Hawk 2 on, I guess the first time I played it was on a Windows 98, and then the second time I played it was on a Dreamcast in college.
Okay. I was always PS1. I very much associate Tony Hawk with PlayStation.
Oh, yeah. It was, I don't know why I got it on PC. I didn't have very many games on PC, but for whatever, I think maybe 2 didn't come out on N64 right away, if it did, or maybe it was a GameCube game. Not sure, honestly.
Yeah, I don't remember. Yeah.
But for whatever reason, 2, which is one of my favorite games of all time, if not my favorite game of all time.
Ooh.
I adore those 2 games in particular, and 2 especially of the 2.
Yeah.
But as soon as the game was announced, I was ecstatic and was willing to wait however long it was going to take for it to be on a system that I could easily play it on. Because, when Randall was at Xbox was when he played.
Yeah, he like pre-ordered it on Xbox.
Yes, and the pre-order included the demo.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, as someone who played it on those old systems, I had zero qualms with it, like it running on whatever frame rate it's running on and with whatever downgrades the Switch has on it. And I had no issues with it. And then I saw a video. I was trying to figure out this one gap I couldn't remember because I'm now working on 100%ing every gap in every level.
Oh my God.
I love these games so much that all I want to do is just exist in these levels. Like that's what I spend most of my time now doing.
There's so much nostalgia going on too, because it's not just the gameplay; it is the music and
oh my God, the sound and the new tracks.
I was gonna say, they did it from. I remember us talking about this. I can't remember if it was on or off the podcast, but I remember us talking about they added new stuff, but it doesn't feel out of place. It feels like it just belongs.
Yeah, because adding the soundtrack from 1 and 2, it did cover a fair amount of genres. So yeah, adding in some more pop punk, some more ska, some more hip hop.
They did do a good job of spreading and songs. I don't want to say that it got me into those genres, but I didn't really care for hip hop at the time, but I liked a lot of those songs. I got into it.
Here's an embarrassment. Recently made an ass out of myself because I was listening to "Bring the Noise" by Public Enemy, and
it's so funny. That's a song I had in my head for whatever reason. That's a song I had in my head. I didn't know that was Public Enemy either.
Oh, I was in a car with someone, and I was like, is this a remix? This sounds wrong. I know this song. And then that's when I realized that the Tony Hawk version is Anthrax covering.
That's right. That's why I was like, that's a Public Enemy song?
It's originally a Public Enemy song. And then Anthrax does this weird fucking metal cover of it that they add in a bunch of weird noises and guitars on it.
Yeah.
But regardless, it's a great soundtrack, great environments, but so yes, no, the story I was in the middle of saying was that I looked online and saw a video of, I'm guessing either PC, PlayStation, or Xbox, and saw it running at a much higher frame rate with much higher fidelity. And I was like, oh, that's what this game looks like on everywhere else. So there is a significant downgrade in like quality, but I do not care. That doesn't
like at the end of the day, you're still playing Tony Hawk 1 and 2 upgraded.
I have played it on like any system I can get my hands on. I'm not picky. I just want to play it, and that is what you get. You get the exact controls. I can land I know where, like, I have the muscle memory for the combos. Like, I can do the Marseille France, like, out of the bowl onto the lamppost to manual to the quarter circle rail to one rail to the next. Like, I have all of this like decades long muscle memory that still just is perfect in these games that like look so different like than that what they used to, but they still feel the same, and that feeling is just
and when you say they look so different, is it really just like the improved visuals? Because like everything I've seen, like when I look at it at a quick glance, it's like, oh yeah, I remember that stage, or I remember that. Like it almost like
immediately recognizable. But like I remember playing Streets, which is the San Francisco level from the original one, and there is so much fog and pop-up on the N64 for that game that like you can't go down the first hill in the game and see the other end. Like you can't even see like the next building in the level. Like so there are some other things. Oh God. Like all of the ads and product placement are updated too. So like a bunch of like, it was funny watching some skate videos that have all the brands, at least that aren't like the ones that have paid to put their name in the game are thing out, but you see this giant monster logo or like other things. But then they'll also have like, in the New York level, they'll have a giant billboard that's just displaying like a fake news broadcast with like people, like literal people. Like there is so much more detail in these games that they could just not do back when they released the original ones, and it looks great. I love it.
Yeah, I really need to pick these up because like it is like the perfect, and even like again, I know you're saying it's like a little bit of a downgrade on Switch, but like being able to play it in bed and like let me just play a few runs and like
playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 handheld and not the GBA version is like
having both of the games rolled into one with all the characters and all. Again, I know it's not every song, but most of the songs, and you know,
and that was the other thing I didn't mention, but I don't know how it is on the PlayStation or Xbox versions of the game, but the load times are very long, like minute maybe for levels. So like, but once you do a level, once you're loaded into a level, like you can just restart it and it'll start right back up. But that kind of does if you're. I
was about to say, did they like have it like get more open, or because I remember like the main thing with Tony Hawk, I remember those 2-minute runs. Like,
oh yeah,
it's all about that 2-minute run.
Yeah, the 2-minute runs are still there. Like all the objectives are exactly the same. I think they added extra objectives into one to make it match because they have more objectives in the 2 levels than they do in the first one. So they added like maybe 2 or 3 to each of those, but that may have been in I don't know, there was an Xbox remake of 1 and 2, like like original Xbox.
Yeah.
So I don't know if those were originally introduced then, or like, but does it?
I forget. And I'm pretty sure when we talked about it before, I'm sure Randall mentioned this, but does it feel like a cohesive packet? Like,
yes.
Does it feel very distinctly like you're picking? Oh, I'm playing Tony Hawk 1 and I'm playing Tony Hawk 2, or is it all kind of truly rolled into one game?
They are split into 2 skate tours, so you 100% Tony Hawk's 1, and you can start each of them either time. So like I was mixing it up where I would do all of like the first level in 1, and then I would move on to the first level in 2, or I would just finish all of 2 first and then go to 1. And like they're separated into separate whatchamacallit, campaigns or skate tours, but I don't necessarily think they needed to do that. Like they could have just as easily done like, here are all the levels and you're just playing like one. I get it. It makes more sense, I think, if you're, maybe someone who's only played one or only played two. Like you're like, oh yeah, this game, the levels are presented in the order and like the number of tapes or a checklist that you need to unlock to get the next one is the same. And they've changed how you map specials from like, because 2 you could have like it mapped to every input, I'm pretty sure, but like every
you can like customize it. Yeah,
and you can still do that, but there's a limited amount. Like you only have, I think, 8 or 10 slots, as opposed to like per every combination, like left and right, left and up, left and like So you're a little bit more restricted in that, but then it makes it, I don't know, you have to plan it out a little bit more, and each character has their own challenges which are unlocked. Good Lord, there's so much more to this game. There's
so many characters, because again, multiplayer, 2 added so many more new. I
did multiplayer was actually fun. I did play a couple rounds, and like they shuffle, like you would enter a lobby and you would like it would load a stage, and then you would just start skating while you're waiting for everyone to like load in, so there's not like lag in between, like however long it takes for you. So like you're just random people like skating around, and the game mode starts. So they start with or it might, I think it's also random, at least for the free I don't know what it's called necessarily, but I just played like the quick rank match, so I wasn't trying to do the specific game mode or whatever. So it would just cycle through game modes and cycle through
just
levels.
Find a match,
and that was fun. It was great. I never won any of them, but I held my own. I think I got bronze a couple times on a couple different matches. But
is it all like score based? Like you're just trying to beat somebody's score? Because I remember there were like those skate modes, like I guess those are score based too, but like you start right here and you have like, you just get to do one trick and like,
so they do have like, I think I only played 4 different game modes. So one of them was like longest combo, one of them was like highest score, and then they kept graffiti, which was a mode where like every trick you would do off of a piece of like the architecture in the game, like
you would like
paint
it
your color. And then in order for someone else to tag it, they would have to get a higher point trick or combo off of that.
Okay. I remember that mode, but I forgot that's how it worked.
Oh, it's such a
cool
mode.
Yeah, that's a cool mode.
It's good. And then you're just like trying to like push for higher combos, and then like hoping that you don't bail. Like, I love this game. God damn it. I love this series. This is just a perfect game for me. Makes me so happy.
And part of the reason I asked about like how they structured like or how they stitched the 2 together is because like I picked up that Ali Switch Stance collection, which is Ali 1 and 2, which is basically Tony Hawk in 2D form. Mm-hmm. Pretty sure I've talked about him on the podcast at some point, but like Ali 2, just like Tony Hawk 2, added in manuals and stuff like that, like added in all these mechanics. But like that game is very much like you buy the game, it's Ali Switch Stance, but like you very much like on the main menu, like you pick either Ali 1 or Ali 2, and you just play like it's either game totally independently of one another, like to the point where I don't even think like once you boot one up, I think you have to like quit the game to go back to like the main, like I don't even think there's a way to like back to the main menu. Like you have to exit the game, reboot it to reboot like Ali 2. But like Ali 2 is one of my favorite games, and then going back to Ali 1, well, I'm sure at the time it was awesome. It's like not being able to manual and like having like the few limitations that came along with that game is like, I want to play this, but like it's just not as good as 2. So there's no reason, but like being able to go and play Tony Hawk 1 with manuals and all that stuff added
Tony
in
Hawk 2
is like,
and 1 with reverts as well, which was from 3.
That's right. I forgot they added that as well.
So like having both of those, like it is enough of a change that it's just so fun.
Well, it opens up. It's got to open up those levels a ton.
Like it makes scoring high on the first couple level or the first Tony Hawk levels unbelievably easy. It's so
because that first stage is so confined at that warehouse or whatever.
It's
I think it's just called warehouse.
It's so easy to do a trick that like just covers the entire stage.
And it feels so good to do. Yeah, to just go through that vert ramp, smash through the glass, get that secret tape, grind around the like half pipe or the
go
quarter
over
pipe.
The kicker, go up this. It's perfect.
It's so good, and I can picture that whole level like in my head. I can every last element of the geometry. I've got it in my head. So
yeah,
it's and you're saying like the fact that it just feels like muscle memory is just. It's so good. It's so good.
I think maybe it took like a level or two to like getting used to it on like maybe the Switch specifically, like using a Pro controller. But like as soon as I like finished a single campaign, like it was like second nature. Didn't
like all the timing, all that stuff, yeah. And even when before we started recording, but even just you talking about like some of the skaters that are in the games, like. Even that just takes me back. It's like, man,
Kareem Campbell, Jeff Rowley, all of them.
Burnquist. I need them all. I need this game. I probably will get it on Switch if I'm being honest. That seems like the platform to get it on. Even though, like you said, it might run a little smoother, faster.
Oh yeah,
more powerful, whatever you want to call it, quicker on other platforms. But Switch, it just seems like I'll play it the most there. So. Yeah. I'm glad that this game is getting a second wind or even third wind maybe because I kind of forgot about those Xbox re-releases, but yeah, we can never get enough Tony Hawk, and I wouldn't even complain because 3 and 4 were pretty good too. I wouldn't be mad if they put a little bundle together of 3 and 4. I don't think I ever
played 4, but I would.
I didn't play much of it either. I kind of played 1, 2, and 3 were my mains, but I remember 4 being pretty good too. So
hey, I'll buy it.
Yeah, exactly. Or even DLC. Who knows? But I think we could wrap up the games chat this week there, John.
Yes, sir.
Nice. As always, you can find us on the internet at pursuingpixels.com. We're on Discord. I forgot to mention that last time, but we're in Discord all the time. Twitter, Instagram a little bit, YouTube, all that stuff. But pursuingpixels.com. And otherwise, we will catch you next week. And until then, take care.
Bye. Only going to say the sentence. We don't need to make a whole conversation about it. But I keep like looking up like, all right, what is the minimum number of acreage you need in order to have a winery? And like, what is the easiest grape to grow? Well, like, what is the shittiest wine I can make and then sell to like the local, like, I don't know, dive bars being like, hey, here you go. Here's the cheapest one.
I got some Heinz, Chug-a-Lug Heinz for you.
Here's some Rot Gut Domestic for you.
Yeah. This is I grew these grapes within city limits.
Yeah.